Let me ask you something uncomfortable. How many times have you looked back at a decision you made, something you were so sure about in the moment, only to realize later that it was foolish, even self-destructive? Maybe it was a relationship you knew deep down was toxic. Maybe it was money spent chasing status or appearances. Maybe it was putting trust in a leader who promised the world but delivered only disappointment. And yet, you believed. You acted. You justified. This is not stupidity in the way we normally think about it. It's not about intelligence or IQ. Some of the most brilliant minds in history have walked into disasters of their own making. No, the root of this lies much deeper, in something ancient and unsettling about the human condition. Today, we're going to peel back that curtain. Because the truth is, the biggest dangers to our lives and societies often don't come from a lack of intelligence. They come from a darker pattern, one that philosophy and psychology have been warning us about for centuries. Centuries ago, the German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer described stupidity as a greater enemy of good than outright malice. Malice, he said, can be fought. It wears a face, it has intention, it makes itself visible. But stupidity is contagious. It spreads silently through groups, through culture, through systems of power. And here's the twist, stupidity is not always born from ignorance. It often grows out of conformity, from the desire to belong, to fit in, to avoid standing out. A person can have degrees, achievements, sharp wit, and still fall prey to the collective blindness of stupidity. Think about the last time you stayed silent in a group even when you felt something was wrong. Or when you laughed at a joke you didn't find funny, simply because everyone else did. That small surrender is the seed. Now scale it up, to nations, to politics, to history, and you begin to see why civilizations collapse not just because of evil leaders, but because ordinary people refuse to think critically. Machiavelli understood this in his own ruthless way. He wrote about how the masses often elevate the most cunning, manipulative, and self-serving individuals into power. Why? Because deception feels easier to believe than the raw, uncomfortable truth. Leaders who flatter us, who tell us what we want to hear, rise quickly. Those who confront us with difficult realities are mocked, ignored, or destroyed. It's why narcissists and liars often succeed, while honest visionaries are dismissed. History is full of Socrates-like figures, people who question too deeply, being silenced by societies that preferred comforting illusions. But let's step out of history for a moment and back into your own life. Why do we, as individuals, keep making choices that we know will harm us? Psychology has an answer. The Dunning-Kruger effect shows that the less we know about something, the more confident we often feel in our judgments. In other words, ignorance gives us an illusion of certainty. And certainty feels good. Doubt feels painful. So, we choose certainty, even when it's wrong. But here's the uncomfortable truth, the same mechanism applies not just to the clueless, but to the intelligent. In fact, the more clever we are, the more skilled we become at rationalizing our mistakes. We construct elaborate justifications. We disguise our impulses as reason. Nietzsche warned of this when he said, "We are unknown to ourselves, we men of knowledge. Our deepest drives are hidden even from us. We act first, and then build arguments afterward to convince ourselves it made sense." Let me give you a story. In ancient Athens, the citizens prided themselves on being the birthplace of democracy. They valued freedom, open debate, and civic responsibility. Yet, when faced with hard times, when fear spread, they did something tragic. They turned on Socrates, the very man who had been challenging them to think, to question, to see clearly. They sentenced him to death. Why? Because it was easier to silence the voice of discomfort than to confront their own illusions. This is the pattern we repeat, over and over. From Rome's descent into decadence, to modern society's drowning in misinformation, to our own personal lives when we reject uncomfortable truths in favor of comforting lies. Now let me turn this back on you again. What illusions are you living under right now? What truths are you avoiding because they hurt too much? Maybe it's the way you distract yourself endlessly with screens and noise to avoid facing loneliness. Maybe it's the way you tell yourself you'll change, tomorrow, next week, next year, while every day looks exactly the same. Maybe it's the way you've convinced yourself that your voice doesn't matter, so you stay silent while others shape your world. This is the human dilemma. We are creatures who long for meaning, but run from the pain that meaning demands. We crave truth, but we build walls to protect ourselves from it. Plato saw this in his allegory of the cave. Most people, he said, prefer the shadows on the wall, the easy illusions, over the painful blinding light of reality. To step into the light means to risk everything you thought you knew. It means exile from the comfort of the crowd. And yet, without that step, we remain trapped. Not stupid because we lack intelligence, but stupid because we refuse to think for ourselves. Here's the darkest twist of all. Our systems, our societies, even our technologies, are built in ways that exploit this weakness. Social media thrives not on truth, but on engagement. Politicians thrive not on honesty, but on persuasion. Businesses thrive not on your growth, but on your desires. And so, the dilemma deepens. The very things we created to expand our freedom have turned into tools that feed our illusions. But before you despair, remember this: Bonhoeffer, Nietzsche, Plato, Machiavelli, they all believed in the possibility of resistance. Not resistance through violence, but through thought. Through awareness. Through the courage to face the uncomfortable. It starts in the smallest of moments. Choosing silence or speaking truth. Chasing comfort or facing discomfort. Following the crowd or daring to stand alone. So I ask you, what would your life look like if you stopped chasing illusions? What would change if, instead of justifying your choices after the fact, you pause to ask, am I seeing clearly, or am I just protecting myself from the truth? This is not an easy path. It is lonely. It is often painful. But it is also the only path that leads us out of the cycle of foolish choices, failed societies, and the endless repetition of history's mistakes. The world will always reward liars, narcissists, and fools. But you don't have to. You can step outside the cave. You can refuse the easy answer. You can face the human dilemma head-on. And maybe, just maybe, if enough of us choose that path, stupidity will lose its grip. Not because we've eradicated it, but because we've learned to recognize it, first in others, and then, most importantly, in ourselves. So the next time you're tempted to laugh with the crowd, to scroll away from discomfort, or to silence the voice that challenges you, pause. That pause could be the beginning of clarity. That pause could be the moment you stop repeating the pattern. The human dilemma is not that we are weak, but that we are blind. And the only cure for blindness is the courage to see.